Russian President Vladimir Putin said Wednesday that Moscow will target the U.S. if it deploys nuclear missiles in Europe. Reuters reported that Putin said Russia would not make the first move or initiate the confrontation, but warned the U.S. against putting short or intermediate range missiles in Europe. It's their right to think how they want, but can they count? I'm sure they can. Let them count the speed and the range of the weapon systems we are developing, Putin told a gathering of Russia's political elite, according to the news service. Russia will be forced to create and deploy types of weapons which can be used not only in respect of those territories from which the direct threat to us originates, but also in respect of those territories where the center of decision making are located, he added. Putin reportedly argued that Moscow would be forced to respond if the US placed missiles in Europe, as it would reduce the time for the weapons to reach Russia. Putin's remarks were his sharpest yet in the wake of the US's decision to stop complying with the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, also known as INF. The agreement signed by then President Reagan and Soviet Union leader Mikhail Gorbachev in 1987 said nuclear and conventional ground-launched ballistic and cruise missiles with ranges between 300 and 3,400 miles. The U.S. said ahead of its withdrawal announcement that Russia has not complied with the treaty for years. So, one of the things I often try to push back against as someone who's not a Trump supporter is the idea that he has some really cozy relationship with Putin. Because I said to myself, why would two people who like each other? Because think about this. When the New START treaty was signed back in 2010, or rather when it was ratified by the Senate, you had a Democrat, so Obama, who people oftentimes said had a bad relationship with Putin. But even in spite of that supposed bad relationship, they still picked a treaty over a war. Now, Obama bombed 7 other countries, but that's besides the point. So when I see someone that, is supposedly Putin's friend pull out of a decades-long agreement that has specifically to do with their two countries, I'm not really convinced about, their supposed coziness with each other. And that's why it gets really frustrating because I've tried to make this point. When I see people who speak in platitudes about Trump cozying up to dictators, I say, look, I don't care if he gives Kim Jong Un a hug, a kiss, a pat on the back, as long as they do not get into a conflict with the weaponry of both countries. I couldn't care less how cozy they are. People were asking, did Putin influence Trump's decision to pull out of Syria? I don't care if Putin promised Trump 70 virgins in Russia. As long as he gets out of that war, I don't care. But, when I watch the people on places like Twitter and YouTube and Instagram sit here and start going on about what are Trump's true intentions and how is he being influenced by Putin, I realize that these aren't people who are actively following this scenario, because a lot of times I go on the Hill or these other websites, as you can see in the description, and look up articles relating to just current events. So when the INF treaty was pulled out, I thought about doing a video about it. I chose not to because I figured the viewership for it was going to be low. And I didn't believe in editing something that I wasn't convinced people were actually going to want to tune into. But in spite of that, I still maintain the thought that this Russiagate thing is not all it's coked up to be. So that doesn't mean when I say that that everything Mueller has found rather. My grammar is it recurringly will just mess up and get screwed over. But everything that Mueller has found automatically becomes null and void. It does mean that when you watch the actions that have taken place over the last 2 years, they possibly could, at this point, not stand each other. So they could have had a friendlier relationship during the election cycle, and then afterward, it just kind of simmered down and really went into an antagonistic area. And unfortunately, when his advisors, Secretary of State, his national security advisor, these are people who want wars with everywhere. So they've been really forceful with pushing him to get out of treaties that have, just any agreement. So whether it was the Paris Agreement, the INF, as I mentioned earlier, the Iran deal, anything you can think of, they always, this particular administration has pulled out of anything that's been around that involves not going to war with whoever the hell. And a lot of times I've been on the side of other countries as far as just, hey, we're the ones screwing up, because it's been us who's been primarily the one being the opposition rogue state. We're the only country that was in the Iran deal to pull out of it. We were one of only 3 countries in the world to not be in the Paris Agreement. And this has all been under Trump's reign. And I've tried to say before, his advisors are idiots. He's someone who's kind of indifferent, whatever. But they're the ones who tell him, if you're part of this agreement, that's passive. You need to be aggressive. And for what? So it's a sad story that we have a possible higher tension between us and Russia than we would have if some Democrat had been in office that Putin didn't have a relationship with. But I just I want to keep pushing back against that narrative because they don't make sense together. It doesn't make sense for someone who's in another person's pocket to say, yeah, let's get out of the agreement that says we need to be stable with our weaponry. Yeah, and then let's also have the guy who is supposedly the friend of the US president say, yeah, if they put their missiles over there, we will attack. So theoretically, if they were so friendly, they could have communicated that, over the phone or something. But that makes too much sense. And one thing I want to point out is during one of their discussions, it was shortly after Trump took office, they had a phone call where Trump mentioned the New START treaty, so the one that Obama signed, that was ratified by the Senate, and he spoke very negatively about it. And you can just from hearing that tell that that's not Trump, because that agreement was never discussed by Trump during the campaign cycle, to my knowledge. Certainly not as much as the Iran deal, where you can say, okay, well, at least we knew what his record on that was. It was just out of nowhere. He's saying, yeah, that New START treaty was so horrible. Oh my God. Bleh. So again, only now have all these treaties that were, I mean, think about it. START is something that was, if I remember correctly, initiated by Bush. And the other agreement, the INF, was from Reagan. So all of this stuff, came from different people in his own party, and it's just sad that we can't get that continuity going or continuing. So it sucks, but thank you.